and welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. I'm your host Jen, and I'm very excited to talk about today's episode. But before we begin, there will be spoilers as we talk about major events that unfold within the story. In addition, each episode will have a list of trigger warnings in the description. Be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast, and show your support on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. And welcome back. We are here on the Book Stop with another episode, and today we have, for the first time, Abby.
Hi! Thank you for having me, Jen. It's so great to be here and be on your podcast. I love it, the Book Stop.
I'm so excited. I've been wanting you to come on the Book Stop for so long, and here you are.
Yes.
What book are we going to be talking about today?
Today we are talking about What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly by Arianna Davis.
Yes.
Yeah,
so this book came out in October of 2020. So this is my first time reading a biography, so it was very exciting. I came in with an open mind because it's not the type of book that I read. I learned so much from this book, which is awesome. So I want to say thank you for suggesting this.
I didn't know too much about Frida Kahlo before reading the book. I am Hispanic, and my mom's side of the family descends from Mexico, but we kind of grew up an Americanized life, and we didn't learn too much about our own culture, and I feel like Frida Kahlo is such a predominant person in the Mexican world and culture that it was kind of funny growing up. We didn't learn too much about her, but it's been a cute little discovery and getting to read kind of like a microbiography, I'd call it, because it's a relatively short book and an easy read. I did also listen to the Audible version. It's a great book, and actually I follow Arianna Davis on Instagram.
Oh, awesome.
And I watched her while she was writing the book. And so like all of her stories, all of her adventures, I followed along the entire time, and I knew of her through Oprah magazine, and I'm obsessed with Oprah. Obsessed. And therefore I don't want to know. I might not like them anymore. No, but yeah, I've always been obsessed with Oprah. And if you surround yourself with great people, then you should follow them and learn more about them too. So I kind of just through, social media found out a few people that are really close to her, close to Oprah Winfrey. And one of them is Arianna Davis. She's just a really interesting person, and watching her through all the discovery of Frida Kahlo, and she went to Mexico City for at least a month, might have been more than a month, and it was so beautiful there. Just watching, it sounds silly, but watching all of her Instagram stories, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm living through you during this time. And she wasn't necessarily revealing that she was writing a specific book about Frida Kahlo, but she kind of like dropped little hints and Easter eggs about why she was there. And it was so fun to watch her go through that experience. And then when her book came out, I was like, I'm buying this.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know. I feel like extra connected to it because I watched her while she was going through the whole experience.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Like, I didn't even know she had Instagram. I'm definitely following right now.
Yeah.
It makes you feel, like you said, a little bit more connected to the book, being like you've been there since the beginning of it being just a simple thought and then holding a physical copy of it. That's amazing. But yeah, we're going to play a little game to get started. You are going to summarize this book in 30 seconds. Just try your best.
This book is essentially about the honesty and transparency of Frida Kahlo and the way she navigates through her relationships and kind of giving an honest insight into her life through a very small scope. You really get to see how she was unapologetically herself and how that impacted her journey through life and also impacted those that she loved and that were around her.
Yeah, awesome. That honestly, sums it up. It's also, as the title says, a guide to living boldly. So there are, snippets of, words of advice from Frida Kahlo in it as well. But yeah, I'm going to summarize it really quick. Admired as much for her fierce spirit as she is for her art, Frida Kahlo stands today as a symbol of daring creativity. She was a woman ahead of her times whose paintings have earned her generations of admirers across the globe. But perhaps her greatest work of art was her own life. What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly explores the feminist icon's signature style, outspoken politics, and boldness in life and art, even in the face of pain and heartbreak. This book celebrates her larger-than-life persona as a woman who loved passionately and lived ambiguously, refusing to remain in her husband's shadow. Each chapter shares intimate stories from her life, revealing how she overcomes obstacles by embracing her own ideals. But yeah, like I said, this is something completely new to me. It's not something that I typically read, so it was awesome trying something new, taking, that dive into the unknown, basically. Like you said, I personally didn't know a ton about Frida Kahlo. My hardest part was, realizing that this was all true. This all actually happened to somebody, and that she is somebody that was a big impact to other people's lives. So it was really cool just going in and just learning about somebody, seeing the things that they had to not only sacrifice, but admire from a distance a little bit. It was awesome, and I loved reading this book.
I feel like we get to learn more about her as the years go on because the Frida Kahlo fandom does not stop. It just gets bigger and snowballs and gets more momentum. There's so much curiosity around the person that she was because she was so honest with her feelings and the impact that other people had on her. Sometimes people try to mask how someone makes them feel, and I don't believe that she was that type of person. She was very bold, as the title suggests there. She was definitely a woman ahead of her time, which is remarkable to have her story be told today in such a powerful way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna go ahead and do our favorite quotes.
The quote I picked is, "As our culture progresses towards celebrating what makes people different, Frida Kahlo's story only becomes more and more legendary. The tale of a woman whose actions made her a feminist, activist, and leader for gay rights way ahead of her time." I feel like that quote encompasses what most people know about her. So I'm a cis straight woman, and I grew up in a household that was, celebrated who you are, what you can learn about yourself that you didn't know about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Frida I said it before, but she was ahead of her time. And this definitely summarizes the activism and the power that she had over her culture and over women in general and uplifting them. I love that quote.
Yeah, she has made such an impact, and half the time a lot of people don't even realize that it was Frida that made these impacts. But yeah, that's a great quote. I brought two quotes. They're both kind of in the beginning of the story that kind of just stuck out to me, and I just couldn't choose between two. So the first one is, "It's not uncommon, obviously, for an artist to only find great fame and appreciation after their deaths. Sometimes it takes the passage of time for a culture to fully recognize the true impact of a human being." I just really like this one because it kind of ties into the thing I want to talk about with, admiring people. We all have somebody that is famous or in the eyes of society that is kind of not necessarily held to a higher standard, but they have a higher expectations on them. Coming from years ago when we didn't have social media following them around all the time. We know everything about what's going on, everybody nowadays, because of social media. Having Frida, who at the time didn't have this big social media following because it wasn't a thing, and then having that impact now, where she has been gone for so long, but yet still has impacts on people because of her art and of the things that she said that was so important. So I just really like that we celebrate people even if they're alive or dead, and we celebrate the things that they have brought to our own lives. Even if you don't, like we said earlier, even if you don't even know her, you don't know anything about her, her impact is around all over the place. Now that I read this book, it's in every color that I see, it's in every song that I hear. I feel like Frida's in the world more now that I know more about her. And it's just sad that I just now know about her. I wish I would have known about her a lot earlier when I was a lot younger. I feel like I would have connected to her from the start if I just known. Like, the only thing I really knew about Frida was, honestly, from the Coco movie. When she
tiny part.
That tiny part. But it was impactful. That was the part that I remember the most in Coco. When they come out wearing the papaya. They come out in the papaya and drink some mother's milk and stuff. Yeah. I love that, you know, her impact is everywhere.
Her imagery is very famous, right?
Yeah.
So is her artwork, but that's just part of who she was, not the most significant, I think.
Yeah. The other quote I had was, "History is full of stories both well-known and untold that proves the unmatched strength of women. There are familiar names, the Joan of Arcs, the Rosa Parks, and Michelle Obama, and the Hillary Clintons of the world. But then there are those who are lesser known, the hidden figures who changed culture and histories, whose names we may never be aware of." Oh, I love that line so much.
It's a good one. It really is.
You have all of these things that these famous people that have changed the world as we view it, and then we have these other people that aren't well known that have made an impact that we just don't even know about. So, the first thing I want to talk about, the biography of this whole thing. Again, something I've never really gotten into, read. I don't know why I don't like biographies. I just think they're sometimes a little boring. Like,
what?
A little bit. But what I do like about this is even the beginning of the story. Arianna is the writer of this book, and she says that the meaning of biographies aren't to tell a life. They're to tell lessons. Mm-hmm. And I have a different perspective on biographies now, for sure. Like, I definitely understand the importance of them. But reading this book and reading it from Arianna, she just has so much respect for Frida that it is just seeped into these pages, and you can just pick it up right from every sentence that she writes on the page. You can just see how much she respects her. It gets to the point where you think that, like, they knew each other in life. It was awesome reading it and just kind of seeing the world from, I guess, from Frida's point of view a little bit, but also Arianna.
I love biographies. I'm not that into fiction because it doesn't always feel relatable to me. And I have a really strong curiosity for people and their behaviors and their experiences. And I feel like Frida was so honest throughout her life, even with her and her husband's infidelity and her pain and suffering. And she was a child who had polio, tried her best to overcome any situation and just be transparent. And I feel like that's a level of vulnerability that you don't always see and is hard to relate to. But she so clearly expressed that in every day of her life, it seemed.
It's a little bit of Arianna's, like, point of view, I guess, as she's writing this book, but a lot of it is kind of just being I wouldn't say fly on the wall, but being like the third person through Frida's life. Like, you see events that she kind of went through, as well as just seeing the back door behind things, understanding why. She goes into detail of what happened when she was younger and what happened after she had married
Diego Rivera.
Diego, yeah. And goes into detail about their relationship, and just each chapter has a specific theme, I guess you could say.
Topic.
In each one. Yeah. Which I love how they broke that up. So she just goes into kind of, like, detail. She doesn't saying that they're Frida's words, but she definitely, like, tries to mingle in, this is what Frida would do, literally, in situations. Yeah. All right, so what are some things that you liked about this book?
I liked that the book was researched so much by Arianna Davis. You felt immersed in the stories. Even if it's a relatively short book, but you still have the feeling that you're walking through the life of Frida in kind of a snapshot. You just have that feeling and that connection, and I feel like the book really allowed myself to be immersed in Frida's life and kind of, like you had mentioned earlier, be the third person, be a fly on the wall through Frida's experiences. I learned so much about her. Opened my eyes to discover more about Frida. And I know that discussed in the book were different journals that Frida Kahlo has, and there's a museum in Mexico City, and there's so many different ways to access who she was as a person. And I feel like that really, it got me excited to learn more about who Frida Kahlo is and things that I can learn about Frida Kahlo.
Yeah. Things that I really liked, again, I loved how the chapters were broken up. Stages of her life based on her art and her politics and her friendship and her loves and everything like that just stacked up on top of each other. The what would Frida do, like snippets after each chapter, general things in life, like what would you do if you had a crush on somebody, and it would say, well, this is what Frida would do, here are some suggestions. Like, I thought that was very well done and it's something different and I really like that. Yeah, but there are a couple things that I didn't like about the book. So I did think that some of the chapters, within the chapters, I would say, could be a little repetitive.
That's exactly what my opinion is.
Oh, perfect. It felt like she was kind of like saying the things over and over again because she didn't know where she wanted to put the chapters. So she didn't know what to mention and what not to mention. That's what it kind of felt like to me.
Yes.
But yeah, it felt very repetitive. Like she brought up the same things over and over again. And I get that they're important. I totally get that all these things that happened were very important to Frida's story. But right. I don't think you need to say it like 4 times at the beginning of every chapter. There were a couple parts that was a little too personal on Arianna's side. Not that I don't love it. I do love their connection together, but I think some of it might have dived just a little too deep in like her life when I mostly kind of was like here for Frida. I wanted to learn more about her. But again, I don't totally hate that. It was a good connection to show that bond between them.
I have the same dislikes.
I love it.
I'm sure it was talked about at least 3 times when she was sick at Henry Ford Hospital. And I appreciate the emphasis on her having a miscarriage and going through different struggles while she's in the hospital and kind of having to choose her life over an unborn child's life. And that topic was discussed the same exact way in different chapters of the book. And I was just like, can we talk about a different perspective during that moment when she was in the hospital? Because it was, like you mentioned, it was repetitive. And I was like, we already talked about this. Yeah. And it wasn't tied in differently. It was like a copy and paste of that same story and situation. And that did not only the story about her being in the hospital, her repetition was throughout the book in different timelines of Frida's life. Yeah. So that was also a dislike that I had.
Yeah, I think she did a great job on this book. And again, I think that she broke it up very well. Another thing that I wish they would have added into the story was, so a lot of this book, when there are quotes being recognized or certain events being told, she's mentioned that it's pulled from the journals that you were mentioning earlier, and the diaries that she kept and letters that she sent to people. I would have loved if the journals were in there.
Yes.
Like actual copies of it. Yes. Or at least like a rendered version so you could see it a little bit better, or even like quotes from Frida, put it in her handwriting or something like that to add a little bit more personal touch to it. I would have loved that.
Yeah.
Just because this book is very colorful and so detailed, so I think it would have added a little bit more personality to the book, which would match Frida. If we just had those images of the letters, even at the back of the book, would be cool.
I would have loved that. Each time a journal entry was discussed, or something that she wrote down in her journal or was reflecting on, I wanted to see that or feel it in a different way.
Yeah. There's a lot of mentions also of the paintings, obviously.
Right!
Some of them I did look up. I wanted to look them up all at the end, just so I could imagine it, because she would describe the paintings. She would say, here's this painting, this is what the painting's of. So I would try to imagine it in my head, and then I went through and then looked at all of them, and I was like, wow, this is the exact opposite of what I thought it would be. I don't know if you've ever seen Frida's work, but it's very unique. She definitely has her own style of artwork, which is amazing. Shockingly, I'd never even seen any of her paintings. Like, really? It was all very new and different. And I like that her stories did show a lot of her past and her pain, and she was able to express herself through that.
I feel like her artwork, we maybe weren't as exposed to it because it's still gaining popularity. And obviously there's people like Madonna was mentioned in the book, is an owner of at least one Frida Kahlo painting. It kind of feels like she protected her artwork for as long as she could. And at the end of the book, Arianna Davis mentions that the first exhibit that she had in Mexico City was 15 months before she died. Mm-hmm. So yeah. It feels like there was some type of protection, even though she would gift all these paintings to people, lovers, as she talked about, and she would gift them to people, but there wasn't necessarily that much popularity or that much exposure to the general public, is how I interpreted that. So it makes sense that we wouldn't necessarily know too many of her paintings. My dad, growing up, used to take us to the DIA all the time. Mm-hmm. And so the Diego Rivera mural in the DIA is like, it's second nature. When I walk in, it's kind of like wallpaper now, but it's still, I respect it. Yeah. And it's something that I was super familiar with growing up. And I love that the book referenced Detroit so many times. Yeah. And I didn't even think about how often she was here with Diego Rivera. I didn't even think about that or realize until I started reading this book. And I was like, wow, you feel even more of a connection, because I didn't grow up in Detroit, but I'm from Metro Detroit. And so obviously you have a certain level of pride. Mm-hmm. and it was so unique to hear her talk about the experiences that she had here and feel like you're kind of in a way part of her history, and kind of just made it feel extra special.
Yeah, I always love thinking about how over time things just change, and like you could be in the footsteps of somebody else and not even realize, or same area that somebody else was in so long ago making an impact, and you're now here in the outcomes of those impacts. So yeah, it's cool to think about it, but also kind of scary, because it's like, well, what about 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and it's somebody's walking in my footprints, you know? Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. I have to go to the DIA. I haven't been in so long.
My dad used to take us there all the time. It's like a little playground, like a picture playground, and there's sculptures, and there's space of creativity, and there's a lot of people that are there to respect the details and the artwork, and it's a special place, so I feel like you need to go.
Creativity, like, I feel like a lot of people don't really see the impact of it. Like, I know there's been issues with schools dropping creative outlets for a lot of kids because they don't provide a lot of source of income for the schools. Yeah, creativity is a very important thing for everybody. Everyone needs a creative outlet. Yeah. And whether that be simply going to the DIA and looking at paintings or painting something yourself, any form of creativity that you take as your own. And this book is just dives so much into it, and it shows how this was such an outlet for Frida because of all the things that she went through. One of my favorite things that this book also mentions is creativity within people, and how a lot of people see it as a gifted, or, you know, they were born with it. Mm-hmm. But this book shows straight up that it's not. It all comes with practice, and like, yeah, you might have an advantage a little bit because you have been around creativity and paintings for your entire life. You might have more of a better keen eye to it. But Frida, it goes into the story of what happened to her after her bus accident, and she was bedridden for so long that she didn't have a choice but to have an outlet of painting because she couldn't do anything else. You know, she started out and she wasn't great at it. She sucked at painting, but she learned and she practiced. She became such a powerful artist, and I just love the emphasis on creativity, and that it's not something that people are born with. You might have a connection to it, but you have to practice and gain that talent to be able to create something that you're proud of.
You really do. You have to invest in the practice of being creative, and that looks different to everyone. And even journaling or music, documenting in some fashion is an outlet of creativity, and naturally as human beings we need to express ourselves in some way, and it's not only beneficial to ourselves subconsciously and maybe consciously over time once you hone in on whatever practice it may be, but it's essential to being a better person and impacting other people's lives, and then having a better perspective on how we impact the world and this life that we're living. And creativity is definitely a practice, and I need to get better about it. But Frida Kahlo, she didn't let anything stop her. She was laying down in the hospital bed after the bus accident, and she was impaled by
a pole.
Yes, by a pole. And I was like, this woman she's not letting anything stop her.
She's gone through so much. Like, you don't even realize. There was a list of things that she just experienced her entire life, and I'm just like, how did she do it?
I don't know.
And that's another thing that I really admire in this book, I really love, is the discussion of pain. It wasn't something that was kind of brushed aside, and it went into detail of how she experienced it and how she embraced it at points. She had a choice. Her entire life was either embracing her pain or just ignoring it. She chose to just embrace it and change it into something that was a little bit more
constructive,
I guess.
Maybe?
Yeah, like something that it wasn't just hurting her, but it was, making an impact somewhere else. She did all these paintings not only to express how she was feeling, but to kind of be an outlet for somebody else that is experiencing the same thing and can't. So in this book, who would you say is your favorite character?
Kind of like her husband, Diego. I'm saying I kind of like.
Kind of like. Okay.
Because I kind of despise him.
Yeah. I feel that vibe.
Yeah. So, Frida's my favorite character.
Well, we gotta be honest here.
I know. But they work so well together in, like, her life story. So they got married in the 1930s, and then they ended up getting divorced for a short period of time, but got remarried, which was kind of crazy to me, because I felt as though Frida was always trying to set boundaries, but was allowing Diego to be her top priority in anything that she did, regardless of how much pain he put her through. But she kind of had her little paybacks. They both had affairs. It's more well known that Diego had affairs rather than Frida because of his celebrity-like status. But I like the love that they have for each other, but Frida definitely has a sense of power and ownership over him that I think he wouldn't let people know too much about, because he doesn't seem to be a very vulnerable person. He can be honest just like most men are. But Frida, she kind of has like this little sassy dominance thing going for her, but she's also submissive to him in different ways, which is it's a very generalized way of what I'm saying, but I don't know. She's definitely my favorite character. She's a boss of her own life.
Absolutely. I said she was my favorite too. So, not saying that there isn't other good characters in there. Like, they describe a few other friends along the way for Frida. A lot of people that impacted her life throughout the entirety of the book. But obviously, we're going to be a lot more connected to Frida because she is the main character. It's called What Would Frida Do? So, if you didn't know. But, yeah, I admire her and the things that she went through and the feelings that she felt and how she took such a negative handout from life and was able to take it and change it to something that impacts to this day, even years after she has passed. A lot of people should know more about her. Absolutely. You should learn more about her in school right along with all the other historically famous people. Yeah. There's no reason that people should know about her.
She was able to find balance through so much hardship and tragedy and live the best life that she could during unforeseen circumstances. And I don't know, she's resilient. It clearly shows throughout her life that regardless of what situation she was going through, whether it was personal or physical, she persevered and just made the most out of the situation and found a way to have self-care. And that kind of, through her art, her self-care was her artwork and was being an artist and having relationships with people, whether it's physical or friendship. And I really admired, in a very weird way, the relationship that her and her sister had. Because, so her husband cheats on Frida with her sister.
Yeah.
Alita, Valerie, Mary, Katie. If you ever
show up.
If you ever think for 1 second you're getting away with that, you got another thing coming.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And that would be very hard to overcome. But for some reason, Frida was like, c'est la vie, like, such is life. And there's a phrase throughout the book that is, it talks about, like, viva la vida, so live your life, live the life. That is definitely something that you could tell Frida lived by that. And the Hispanic culture is very loving and open and understanding, sometimes to a fault. You can't let too many people do too many bad things to you. But Frida, she just kept marching on.
Yeah. Yes, she did. All right, so I just want to take a minute here to recognize our Patreon subscribers. So a huge shout out to Bree P and Nick W for following the podcast. Yeah, we appreciate it. If you want to appear in one of our podcast shout outs, head over to Patreon in the description and follow today. So one thing that this book I also really loved was the talk of how Frida kind of tiptoed the line between self-love and narcissism. A lot of her paintings were self-portraits.
Right.
All of the rest of the paintings were typically about her own life and things that happened within her lives, a lot to do with the struggle of pregnancy and her infidelity and miscarriages that she had, which was a very hard time for her and kind of a endless cycle for her. It went on for so long because
it really was.
Her whole life she just wanted to be a mother, and it just was never in the cards for her. After she had her accident and was bedridden, she had paintbrush, canvas, and a mirror. That's all she had, really. You know, she had her own self as the subject, yeah. So a lot of her paintings are self-portraits, and they're not, I guess you could say, they're her as herself. You know, it's not rendered in a way that society will think is beautiful. It's just how she saw herself and what she gave to the world. So, yeah, I mean, if you have only paintings of yourself, maybe, I guess you could see it. But at the same time, she knew herself the best, and that's what gave her inspiration, was herself. And that's what you gotta do to get through life, then you do it. You know what? Nobody else is going to be on your side as much as you are.
That's true.
And you can quote me on that.
Painting herself and using herself as the subject of all of her artwork was probably a way that she navigated all the hardship and emotions and pain that she felt. I feel like balancing self-love and the narcissism, balancing the two can be difficult, because I feel like some people can get trapped in their own world of, well, I'm taking care of myself, me. But really, that's part of who you are. That's not only who you are, because we all have an impact on everyone's life, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you're keeping yourself in one box. And I feel like had she lived past 54, she would have grown so much as a person. You know, she overcame so much, and I think her perspective on life would have shifted a little bit, and she probably would have had more paintings of something else that wasn't a self-portrait, just because we all grow and grow older and learn more and grow as a person. And I think she would have had incredible artwork too had she lived past 54. But it's interesting how when you think of Frida, you just think of her self-portraits, and you're like, okay, but what else are you giving us?
Yeah. She had a lot of amazing work, and you know, some of her best works were self-portraits. And I think if that is what gets you up in the morning and that is what makes you love yourself, then do it. Don't let other people put you down because they're like, well, that seems a bit selfish to just think about yourself. In the grand scheme of it all, you got to think for yourself, and you gotta be there for yourself, because you're always going to be number one up to bat.
Yeah.
And you're also the pitcher, and you're also in the outfield, and you're also on all the bases.
Who's gonna look out for you more than yourself?
Exactly.
Quote him.
Quote me. But yeah, I think Frida is a good example of self-love. And I think this book really summarized how having it written by somebody else trying to write it in Frida Kahlo's perspective isn't always going to come across as great as you want it to be, because you might think, oh, that is a bit self-centered and that is a bit narcissistic, but it's not. But yeah, I think this book did a beautiful job at kind of describing that it's okay to think about yourself first every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate yourself, but also do good for others.
Yes, always. So who in this book do you say is your favorite relationship?
My favorite relationship in this book is Frida and Leon. It seemed as though their romance was genuine and allowed Frida to forget about Diego and all the crap that Diego put her through. And I love their romance. It seemed it was what she deserved. It was the love, it was the affection, it was the attention that she was getting from Leon that Diego was not giving her. And that was a breath of fresh air, because you want the love for someone that they deserve. And I feel like that was the person for Frida as Leon. Leon and Frida forever.
It's just sad because she was so obsessed with Diego.
Yes.
From when they got married and so on and so forth. She was just so obsessed with him. He was the light of her life. She didn't think of anybody else but him, even though he did all these negative things and bad things to her. She just kept coming back. And like I said earlier, she did get back to him on a lot of that stuff. And she had her own affairs with men and women alike. And didn't she get with one of the women that Diego got
one
with?
of Diego's women.
Yeah.
One of Diego's mistresses. Here comes Frida knocking on the door. Yeah. And she's like, not today, sir. I'm going to have a slice of that too. Like, who does that? That is I think that's the feistiness that Frida is. She's like, I'll show you who's boss. And she probably has a relationship with that woman in spite of Diego. And then it turns into something that she's genuinely attracted to. And she's like, I would answer the phone if you called, or I would open the door for you if you showed up, because I'm naturally thinking of you because I have a desire for you. Yeah. And I don't think that's what the intentions were in the first place between the two of them.
Yeah, it just like completely opened up to like her accepting that she is bisexual. It's like, first it kind of was like I'm getting you back, but then she did start having these like genuine feelings for her, and she was like, okay, got me there.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure if we were to look through some of these journals, we'd find more information and dig up some great relationships that weren't touched on in the book. I'm sure there's a lot of information out there to show, even during a time where it wasn't accepted we're talking 1930s, you know, and I feel like she's obviously ahead of her times and not caring enough to think, I need to protect myself. She was just like, I'm going for it.
Yeah. Going back to Frida and Leon, I wish there was a little bit more, honestly. Like, we get, like, snippets of it, but it doesn't go into, like, super detail. And I think it was it felt like more like she was trying to just focus on Diego and Frida. So I would have liked a little bit more, but I think what you said, like, he would have been good for her. It didn't end the way it did. But...
He seemed like a good person, and then he got assassinated by an ice pick.
Yeah. It was crazy. Again,
I'll never look at an ice pick the same again.
It just adds to that heartbreak that Frida just endured her entire life. So
it does.
So I said my favorite relationship was the author and Frida.
Oh, okay, coming in hot with the obvious but necessary.
Absolutely. Like we said already, like it's just so attached to Frida, and there's a bond there that you can just feel through the books, and she holds Frida on such a high pedestal. It's like me with Harry Styles. Okay? Let's be real. That's the facts. That's what this is, and I respect that. But no, I really like the feel of the idolization of it, and it makes you kind of think more about Frida and the impacts that she has. It makes you think, well, when I was reading at least, it made me think, like, when I first started it, I was like, why is it so, like, why did it hit her so hard? Like, what connections does she have to Frida? And then as she tells the story, you just get to understand it bit by bit, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Arianna Davis has such an admiration for Frida that has been lifelong, and that shows in every page of the book. There was one point in the book where Arianna was saying, sometimes I feel like Frida's around me and judging me, or not judging, but just kind of like looking around.
Judging.
Okay, judging. Judging her choices and, you know, whether it's in a relationship or a friendship. And it's funny that, I don't know if you would say guardian angel, but you know, it's someone that is around her and it has a presence in her life all the time. Mm-hmm. And you can feel that relationship between Arianna and Frida.
Yeah.
Great relationship choice.
Thank you.
Why didn't I think of that?
It's okay, you can borrow mine whenever you want. All right, so do you want to play a game?
I love games!
Oh, perfect. So I have a game here. What we're going to be doing is, as we've said multiple times, that this book is just full of quotes from Frida. And it's in pretty much every other page. And they did so good on the pages. I love them. But we're going to play a game where I'm going to read you a quote. And you just have to say if it's from Frida or not.
Okay.
So the first quote I have is, I don't paint dreams or nightmares. I paint my own reality.
That is not Frida.
You're so adamant about it. No, it was Frida.
Oh! Yeah. It was the smirk on your face. I'm like, Jen?
No. You will face many defeats in life, but never let yourself be defeated.
Frida.
Mm-mm.
Oh!
Harry
Styles.
No, I wish. I paint flowers so they will not die.
Frida.
Yep, that one's Frida. I paint self-portraits because I am so often alone. Because I am the person I know best.
I think that's Frida.
Yep, that's Frida.
Yeah, I remember that.
Never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game.
Wow, we had a lot of talk about baseball analogies earlier. That sounds like a Jen's original.
Actually, it's Babe Ruth. Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't Frida. Don't think she played baseball a lot.
No.
Pain, pleasure, and death are no more than a process of existence.
I don't think that was Frida.
It was Frida.
Oh!
Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happy.
I don't think that was Frida.
No, it's too cheerful.
Right.
At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can.
I don't think that was Frida.
That one is Frida.
What?
Yeah.
It sounds like just an average person's philosophy.
Well, she did it. Art is for the soul as music is for the heart.
I don't think it was Frida. Oh. Who was it?
Me. Yay! I don't know if you won or not, but you got some.
I did not! You got some!
You got like
2.
40%. What are some things that you would change, do differently if you were writing this book? This is solely like opinion based. For example, I honestly would have put her paintings in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, either like in the back, between chapters, or put them in the cliff notes, because they mention the painting so much. Mm-hmm. And just put like this painting, little number, and then you can go to the back of the book and look at the painting. I think that would be kind of cool. And then again, what I said earlier about having that little personal touch of the notes and the letters in the book, as well as like her handwriting, I think would just add a little bit more of Frida in this book, as well as like tie it all together.
I feel the exact same way. Get out of my head.
Shoot.
I agree 100%. The missed opportunity that's so obvious is we don't have those visual paintings. Mm-hmm. We talked, not we, me and Arianna.
Oh, you DM'd her?
I'm sure I have once or twice. Just to be like, yes, queen.
Slay.
I would have loved to have the paintings in the book. The paintings were talked about in probably every chapter, obviously, definitely. Because Frida Kahlo is such a famous artist. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to have that visual. Each time that a painting was mentioned, I could go and like stare at it and kind of dissect the painting a little bit through the progress of the story. And dang it, I wish they would have been there. I wish I would have, aside from having journal entries from Frida Kahlo, I would have loved to had some type of documentation straight from Diego. A quote or whatever it may be to show his personality a little bit more through his own words. Yeah. Because I feel like, you know, we obviously have our own opinions about Diego and the way he treated Frida Kahlo and doesn't have a chance to say anything for himself. And I felt like I would have loved to have had some type of connection with him. I mean, I don't love the guy, not gonna lie. Like, you can't convince me that I like you, Diego. But I would have loved to kind of felt him in the story a little bit more personal. And that was missing for me.
Yeah, I think it would have added a little bit more, even more realism to this biography. Yeah, if we could just have that personal touch. But again, this is our own personal opinions.
Right. I know she'll come out with another book. Like, you know.
Frida Kahlo, too. But yeah, so we're kind of wrapping up here. We do one little thing before we go, though. We're going to do a little rating scale. And we do it here different on the podcast. We make up our own thing. So I would give What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly by Arianna Davis 7 days of living boldly out of 10. Like, again, this is my first time reading a biography. I came in with a perspective, was like, okay, let's try something new. I think that's something that Frida would do, is try something new. So I think it was a great story. I think the layout was really awesome, how she divided everything up. I definitely want to read more from her, and I want to learn more about people that I don't know anything about, that everyone should know about.
Looking at the cover of the book, Frida's unibrow is very prominent, and as is in all of her paintings. And I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 inch long unibrow.
I love it. I love it so much.
Because I love the book. I love Arianna. And I felt the connection and the joy that Frida brings to Arianna. I felt that as a reader. And I'm sticking with my 8-inch long unibrow.
I love it. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on to the book stop and reading this absolutely wonderful book. But I appreciate you bringing something new on and something that I had to step out of my comfort zone to read.
Next time, I'm going to do a different biography.
Perfect. Awesome.
It'll have to be someone that you don't know. Thank you for letting me come on your podcast. I love your show. Everyone needs to go listen to the book stop and become a patron. What are you waiting for? Reach out to Jen. You've got your Instagram, your socials. Follow, like, subscribe. What would Frida do? She'd stan Jen.
Stop. She would listen to this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We don't have an episode scheduled right now, but if you guys want to see Abby back on, definitely give this episode some love. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for turning the pages with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support by leaving a review, sharing the episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at The Bookstop Podcast. Join us on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hope you are too.